Okay. Thank you for that. All right, so good afternoon. I apologize for the late start. We were still on the Senate floor. I would like to call to order the meeting for Senate Committee on Revenue and Economic Development. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Senator Dennis. Senator Ratty. Senator Kiekeffer.
Here.
Senator Sievers-Gansert.
Here.
Chair Neal.
Here. So, Secretary, could you please mark Senator Dennis and Senator Ratty present as they come on? So I'm not going to get into the virtual aspect of the hearing. As you know, we are virtual. So if you'd like to participate, you would go to this agenda item and then you would click on participation. That would then send you information for you to call in, and then you would select whether or not you're in support, opposition, or neutral. If you have written comments, please go to the agenda for Senate Revenue, and you can send an email or a fax, and your comments will be uploaded in the record if they are to the bill. So I'm going to just go ahead and jump into the bill hearing. We have one bill for today. We're going to open up the hearing on SB 278 and welcome Senator Settlemyre.
Hey, Madam Chair. I greatly appreciate that. I have to run off to Judiciary, so I'll do my best to introduce it and see when you feel it's free to let me break off and go back to Judiciary. The main issue at hand within this bill is that the laws that were put forth in this subject matter were done through the initiative petition process, which, as we know, sometimes may not always be the best way to legislate. And so in that respect, I think it's time to discuss potential changes. We're past the time frame, and thus we can have those discussions. It has to be at least 3 years after an IP before it can be changed. And what the issue seeks to address is that currently, if you have more than one cultivation license, you're forced to have actually separate fees on all that. And so it's time, in my opinion, to have a deliberate discussion about scenarios where that policy should and should not apply. And that's really the gist of the bill. If it's possible, if we could have Mr. Adler present, and then if that's okay with you, Chair.
Yes, that is fine, Senator Settlemyre, and you're free to go to Senate Judish.
I'm sure they'll be happy.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Settlemyre, and thank you, Chair. All right. Hello. Thank you, Senator Settlemyre, and thank you, Chair Neal, and members of Senate Committee of Revenue and Economic Development. I am Will Adler with Silver State Government Relations, representing the Sierra Cannabis Coalition today. Hopefully, y'all can hear me well, and we'll jump right into it. Senate Bill 278 is a simple bill on its face, but it's trying to address a simple oversight, as I see it. Nevada legalized cannabis, as Senator Settlemyre said, through a ballot initiative process. And in that process, it did cover a lot of it, and it was quite detailed, but it does have some oversights and some things that could be addressed today that weren't addressed in it. In that initiative, it did set up the tax process that we see today, where you have a cultivation, a production, and a dispensary. But before you could leave that first cultivation, the initiative said you must pay a 15% wholesale excise tax. That is today the way we do it, and we've structured it so medical marijuana parodies that. And then we've added an additional excise tax at the retail storefront, where we charge 10% excise tax to non-medical patients for the entirety of the cannabis tax package, right? So an oversight that is, come up today that wasn't sort of thought of back in the day was that somebody would have more than one cultivation to feed into their production, to feed into the ultimate retail storefront, because it was thought of that people would only tend to have one of each. Well, today we've had multiple groups buy into the state or buy multiple dispensary groups that were separate and combine them into one nowadays, or just multiple cultivations have started purchasing each other. Smaller ones have gone out of business and larger ones have been able to acquire them. That also has gone forth now that we have the ability to exchange licenses in the state. So Senate Bill 278 looks to address that oversight by saying yes, we should pay that 15% wholesale tax. But as written in the ballot initiative, it basically said any transference or any leaving of a cultivation facility requires the 15% wholesale tax to be applied. That is good and sort of a thoughtful way to do it, as in the alcohol wholesale licensing, where the first step must pay for the taxes. But it doesn't account for people who own two cultivations at sort of a lateral level here, and that one cultivation could then produce most of the products or the trim, ship it over to another cultivation, and they could then roll the joints over there or have the finished processing at this cultivation. Then when the processes are complete and it then goes vertically up the chain again, it would apply to that last cultivation facility, or that last facility would still pay that ultimate 15% wholesale tax. This bill just simply allows that lateral movement of products between two cultivations owned by the same group to take place, and then allow the final cultivation, once it ships out of that one, to go to a production facility or a dispensary or some other outlet. It will still pay that 15% wholesale tax. It just clarifies, if you wish to do any business before that final cultivation transports it, that is not considered a wholesale or a transference officially, under the taxable sense, because it's within one group. That's what essentially Senate Bill 278 wishes to address and tries to do in a nutshell. I do know that it doesn't do that quite today. As written, it may have actually somewhat of a loophole, but that was unintentionally done. And I have already met with the Department of Taxation. We've spoken about this, and that there is going to need to be an amendment, and there will be a friendly amendment produced by them, coming forward. But it is not quite ready for this committee today. But it is with the intent to work with them to clarify this language and to make this the issue at hand.
Okay, thank you for that. Is it just you presenting, or was there someone else, I know, besides Senator Settlemyre?
I believe somebody from the Department of Taxation is on the line as well to clarify if need be, but I am the presenter of this bill.
So I'll have the Department of Taxation get on to clarify around the 15% wholesale and how it's currently administered before we get into questions, because I think there's some confusion on how it's currently being done. And Department of Tax?
Yes. Thank you, Senator Neal and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Melanie Young, Executive Director for the Nevada Department of Taxation. So currently, the way this tax works is it's upon the first transfer is when the tax is imposed. So transfer or sell is used in the same context. And so where this bill, the department has a couple areas of concern with that is in the language, specifically on Section 8, it's unclear, and if when the wholesale tax applies on the subsequent to the transfer to the affiliate. If a transfer between the cultivation facilities and its affiliate is exempt from tax, then the next transfer sale from the affiliate to the next cannabis establishment should be taxable. And so right now, the way the language in the bill, it does not, that section is not clear to us. And I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Okay, so all right. So I think that's the information that we have, and then we'll just dig into it. Members, any questions?
Madam Chair.
Senator Kieckeffer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So if we apply the tax at the exit of the product out of the cultivation facility, why is it? Why would you want to restrict this to cultivators that are commonly held? What's the value in doing that? Why couldn't there be a trade or transfer of product between two cultivators, and then ultimately the cultivator that is transferring it out up the vertical food chain, so to speak, the tax would still be levied at that point, right? So why do these need to be commonly held facilities for this to be a logical thing to do?
Thank you, Senator Kiekefer. I hope you're addressing it to me, and I will gladly answer. So Will Adler for the record. The reason why is basically because certain products at a cultivated level can be transferred to another cultivation outside your group for a saleable value. So if I have a cultivation that produces a lot of flower or buds, but it has excess trim and excise, unfinished materials, I could sell that to another cultivation and they could use it in their processing, or they could use it in some beneficial way. Additionally, I could grow clones as a cultivation and sell those incomplete, unfinished plants by definition, a clone, to another cultivation. And currently that is taxed already. So Department of Taxation does have an assessed wholesale value sort of sheet for all of these transferences online. And basically we wanted to make sure those could still be charged when properly done, but, not do it excessively inside an interior group.
So for clarity, a sale from one cultivator to another, a cloned plant, for example, that's taxable at what, the 15% wholesale rate? But then when they transfer, when they grow those plants and flower them and sell the buds to a dispensary, it's taxed at the 15% wholesale rate again?
So it is the assessed wholesale value, or the sheet that is produced. Will Adler for the record. Department of Taxation issues every 6 months a sheet that sort of sets a set value for what is 15% value based on the market average for everyone. So this keeps companies from internally saying, hey, I'm valuing this at $1, right, for my pound of marijuana to transfer to myself, right? Then they would get out of the 15% wholesale tax. So we actually pay a set amount per pound of marijuana, per joint, per thing, issue per widget on that, cannabis tax sheet is set by the state as a standard amount per that unit that we go off of. So like I said, clones are listed on that. Everything's listed on that because it's anything leaving a cultivation is supposed to be taxed at a 15% wholesale value. So they've come up with a sheet that sort of lists anything that could come out of a cultivation, from buds to a joint to a live plant on that sheet. So we're trying to address this without stopping it from happening where it should happen correctly between two cultivations owned by separate companies.
So theoretically,
you're right on.
But theoretically, the same product could be taxed multiple times at the wholesale rate.
Yes. Yeah, that could happen. Also trying to prevent.
And I guess maybe Ms. Young can jump in. Was that the design? I had been under the impression that when something went up the vertical, that's when it got taxed. So if you were transferring along the same sort of plane, that you wouldn't be taxing along that space, but only when it goes up. Maybe I'm wrong.
Director Young, can you clarify?
Yes, thank you, Senator Kiekefer, for the question. For the record, Melanie Young, Executive Director for the Nevada Department of Taxation. And I'd like to clarify some of the information here today. The department does every 6 months determine a fair market value of the transfer of cannabis. It's on the first transfer only. Any subsequent transfer is not taxed. So I wanted to make sure that that was clear. Thank you.
That is clear. Thank you. So this would exempt that first transfer from taxation, but then upon that second transfer, it would still be taxed at the 15%.
Again, Melanie Young, Executive Director. Thank you, Senator Kiekefer, for the question. Yes, so it's my understanding what's being proposed here would transfer to a like ownership on that first transfer. And the way the bill's written to us, it appears unclear in when that next transfer would occur in the sale where the tax would be imposed. So we would be in our meeting with Mr. Adler, we had proposed some proposed language that we're still working on to make sure that transfer would be clear and when that sale would occur and the tax would be due.
Okay, that helps. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you for the leeway, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions?
I have a question.
Senator Severs-Ganser? Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Neal. So I'm kind of wondering if this goes back to the definition of what wholesale means, because you're counting transfers versus saying what's the definition of a wholesale sale, because that I would have thought would have triggered the tax. So then it wouldn't matter how many times you transferred it, as long as you could define what was the wholesale sale.
So, Will Adler, for the record, I hope you're directing it to me, Senator Sievers-Gansert, but the intent of this bill is to clarify that issue. So everything that left a cultivation or any kind of transference out of a cultivation was considered the sale at the time. And to be clear, I was theoretically thinking about, if you have a clone that I'm selling to another facility, that clone does have to be raised and grown up and then harvested, and it will then become their cultivated product. The clone does still have an assessed tax fee, and as in this scenario, that should be charged, and then again, the final tax wholesale should again still be able to be charged in this case. So yes, the idea of sale was just triggered at the cultivation level. Whenever it leaves this building, the tax must be credited to this cultivation, right? And hence the sale is proposed to be done in the near future. So it is sort of that crux of what is a wholesale and when's the sale happens. So we're trying to get it, you're very much correct. That moment is not in a lateral sense between a company internally, but whenever it leaves it, its final cultivation should be the moment of wholesale. Yeah.
Right. And I guess just when I'm reading the bill, you're trying to define affiliate and you're defining transfers here and there, versus if you had a clean definition of what a wholesale sale was, it wouldn't matter if it was transferred between cultivation facilities, and it wouldn't matter whose it was. Whoever was the ultimate wholesale entity would be the one where the tax was charged and then it was sent to taxation. And so it's just a different approach. But because you seem like there were questions first about, you've got the definition of affiliate, but what if it's not an affiliate? It's as Senator Kiekhaefer pointed out, it's a facility that's owned by a non-affiliated cultivation center, but it's still not being wholesale because it's going to another cultivation center. So just a thought that looking at what the definitions of wholesale may help with what you're trying to accomplish. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. I have a question, because what I'm trying to understand and what's not super clear is who is not a cultivator? Because let me rephrase this. I thought pretty much everyone owned the whole thing, right? So you have one owner and they own pretty much all parts of the production. So how many people fall out of the current categories that you're talking about? Because I don't see how it can go to another cultivator to not be doubly taxed, because I thought there were just a limited amount of owners and they kind of allowed themselves to pretty much own all parts so they can maximize their profit. So that's what I'm not clear on.
Senator Neal, Will Adler for the record. I think, ideally most businesses did try to become fully vertically integrated, where you would own the cultivation or production and the retail store piece of it. But there are several groups, many groups that are just standalone cultivations that simply cultivate to sell to retail stores externally. So they're thought of as the third-party cultivators. But like I said, groups have become larger and have acquired other groups, is where we now see this, phenomenon of having multiple cultivations within a single ownership group. So that just became sort of a business and usability aspect, where they think, hey, can I, not have to roll joints at every one of these three cultivations? This facility does that best of the three we have. Can we just send our trim from these other two to that one and have the joints rolled there? The question was just the comfort of being able to do that transference under the definitions as strictly as they were written, raised some flags and some questions about if that was even allowable without having to pay that wholesale before it goes to essentially your own facility. And then do you owe it on that joint because it's a new product under the wholesale categories as a new wholesale? So this just looks to clarify that particular issue, and then, lateral movement of products within a cultivated group.
So how many entities have actually done exactly what you just said, where they merged and brought in several other cultivators under their roof or business model? How many?
Will Adler for the record. I do not know how many off the top of my head. I work with 3 groups in particular today on that front, but I don't know the total of groups that have combined multiple cultivation licenses today. But I'm not sure this tax has ever really been applied or charged anywhere today. So this may be a theoretical issue today that we're looking to clarify before multiple people do this, for that matter. Thank you.
Okay, because that's what I'm trying to understand. Like, is it a small amount? And if you're saying it's a theoretical problem now that you want to solve, I guess in Section 9C, if you're working with Department of Taxation, I had a problem with that, the wording of that language in Section 9C, because it just seemed to, I just didn't understand how that was going to work. So I'll just leave that there. So Department of Tax, I need to understand something in regards to the clarifying changes that you're trying to make. Do you have a conceptual idea of what sections are being changed, and is it something that can at least be put on the record so we can understand like what you're seeking to change?
Yes, Senator Neal, Melanie Young, Executive Director for the Nevada Department of Taxation. If I could have Shelley Hughes, who has been working on that language, to be able to explain what that proposed language would look like at this time.
Good afternoon, Shelley Hughes, Chief Deputy for the Department of Taxation. We were looking at changing both Section 8 and Section 9C. We feel 9C is a very broad definition of affiliate, and this could potentially capture a lot of cultivation facilities, and I believe that that's not Mr. Adler's intent. And Section 8, as Director Young has mentioned, we feel doesn't clarify the subsequent transfer from the affiliate cannabis cultivation facility to any other cannabis establishment. And so we would be working on the language to make sure that it is clear that the wholesale tax would still apply in that situation.
So, Ms. Hughes, based on that you guys are suggesting, are we going to see the 15% wholesale diminish and in terms of the revenue that's being gained from it? Because that's what I'm trying to understand.
Shelley Hughes for the record. That is not our intention. We wouldn't really hope that this would be a revenue neutral change. And that would be our intent with any amendment that we would propose.
Okay, thank you for that. And I know our fiscal staff would like to get some clarifying points on the record. Mr. Gendon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Russell Gendon, Principal Deputy Fiscal Analyst with the Fiscal Analysis Division. And I know we normally wouldn't do this at your staff, but in this sort of non-normal environment, and your staff can continue to work offline with Senator Settlemyre and Mr. Adler and the Department of Taxation. But I thought I sort of understood what the bill was about, but after listening to the testimony and the answers. So what I wouldn't mind going through is because it's my understanding the Department of Taxation interprets the word sale to also include transfer. So that includes when you've got an entity that's vertically integrated or laterally integrated, that they're transferring it, the 15% wholesale excise tax is still due. Then I believe the Department of Taxation said is that they're administering the NRS, and then they have NEC regulations that the 15% wholesale marijuana tax is due on the first transfer. Thus, I'm having a hard time trying to follow what's going on here with regards to Mr. Adler's point, with regards to you have a cultivation facility A, and let's just call it the bud, the flower, and they're going to transfer that to cultivation facility B to say make pre-roll joints. Then it would be my understanding, if I'm listening to the information correctly, that the 15% would be due on the bud when it's transferred, and there would be no additional tax due on the 15% on the pre-rolls when they're transferred. So thus, if that's true, then I'm not sure, as your staff, what this bill is then trying to do, if it is indeed true that taxation will only require the 15% wholesale marijuana tax to be due on the first transfer. So whether that's a wet plant or the bud or the flower, and then it goes laterally into another cultivation facility. And again, I guess my read of the NRS and the NEC is it's irrespective of whether they're laterally integrated or they're independent cultivation facilities. So if Mr. Adler and or the Department of Taxation could attempt to provide information for the committee members and staff, and or if not, we could work that offline. But that's my read of the bill, and then my understanding of the current law in the NEC, and then what was testified to here today, Madam Chair.
Okay, so Mr. Adler, can you clarify?
I will do my best. Hello, Will Adler for the record. So to Mr. Ginden's point, yes, at that first cultivation, you can assess all the taxes. So in the same theoretical setting where cultivation A is shipping trim or unprocessed material going to cultivation B to make them into joints. Well, cultivation B will already have their own supply of trim that has yet to be taxed sitting in there. So the idea is, if I'm rolling all the joints out of this facility, I would like some ability to say, hey, all of this is in the same state of taxation in this trim setting, transferred into here, and they are all going to be taxed as joints or pre-rolls when they leave together. So they're all in the same setting. We know that it's in the same state, and that if any blending of products or combining of things should happen, well, that needs to be separated as is. But if somebody walks in this facility, say an inspector at any time could say, what's the status of this versus this versus this, and 3 different bags have 3 different taxable statuses, it felt like it would be a very uncomfortable setting to be in as this cultivation B. The thought was the easiest processing would be having the final cultivation be the one responsible for the tax burden at the very end of the processing. So I don't know, what it is in general. Just in general, we don't want the in-process, hassle or the thought of needing to track individual pieces of the process. Just knowing whatever's at the end pays the wholesale. When it transfers out of that final facility, whatever the state that is, that must have that same checkbox as it does today with wholesale. But the lateral before it is the new possibility or the new clarity.
So I appreciate that clarification, because I guess what I thought the taxable status matters because of how if it transforms into another product, that matters, right? Which then creates the taxable status. And so regardless of whether or not at the end, it ultimately is this final thing, I thought the transforming moments are the things that as a state we cared about in terms of trying to figure out what this taxing scheme or structure was going to look like as we've gone through these reiterations over the years. Am I not understanding that correctly?
I'll take a stab at this. Will Adler for the record. So originally the medical marijuana law did have that increasing, taxation. So it started at the cultivation with a 2% medical marijuana cultivated tax. Production also added 2% to that. And then at the dispensary level, we then added again tax, on the sale there. Well, when recreational happened, the ballot initiative said 15% wholesale tax at the cultivation. It had nothing in the production in the middle there. It assessed the taxes heavily at the cultivation front end. So to comply with that, to make it easier on the recording of taxes, medical marijuana too, we erased all that stacking tax and made it just the 15% wholesale tax for medical marijuana as well. To add to retail and then to add to the recreational aspect of recreational needs to be taxed more than medical, we then add an additional 10% excise tax at the retail storefront for the retail of it versus the medical retail of cannabis. So that sort of was the original intent, was this ever increasing stack, but that sort of went away with the recreational ballot initiative. And then this too wants to pay that 15% tax and make sure it's assessed before it ever leaves the cultivation to go to a production or go to a dispensary. Just it wants to pay it at that, we want to make sure it's the last transference or the final transference of it leaving a cultivation is the wholesale. But
okay. All right.
Sorry.
So members, any additional questions before I open up for folks calling in support for SB 278? Okay, so we will go ahead and open up for support on SB 278.
Madam Chair, I'm going to head to Judiciary if that's okay.
Okay, that's fine.
All right, excuse me, Chair.
Uh-huh.
Hello, yes. The lines are open. However, there are no callers at this time. Would you like to take a moment to pause and wait?
No, can you see if someone's in for opposition on SB 278?
Okay. If you would like to testify in opposition to SB 278, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Thank you, Chair. There are no callers in opposition to SB 78 at this time, or 278, excuse me.
Okay, is anyone in neutral for SB 278?
If you would like to testify in neutral to SB 278, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Thank you, Chair. There are no callers to testify in neutral to SB 278 at this time.
Okay. So, Mr. Adler, any closing comments since Senator
I believe Director Young may be trying to testify in neutral.
Oh, Director Young? Okay, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Senator Neal. Melanie Young, Executive Director for the Nevada Department of Taxation. And we just wanted to clarify that the department is in neutral on this bill and are working with Mr. Adler and proposing some language to have the bill work for the Department of Taxation.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate it. I hope it'll be less confusing when I see the amendment. So, Mr. Adler, any closing comments on SB 278?
Will Adler, for the record, thank you, Senator Neal, for hearing this bill today. Senate Bill 278 is looking to just clarify the current tax language that we have to date, and hopefully we'll have a neutral impact on the state. And we're committed to working with the Department of Taxation in any way possible to make sure we have some positive amendments next time we're before you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. So we will go ahead and close the hearing on SB 278, and we will open up for public comment. Is anyone on the line for public comment for Senate Revenue?
Thank you, Chair. If you would like to make public comment on SB 278, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Again, to make public comment on SB 278, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Thank you, Chair. The public lines are open. However, there are no callers at this time.
Okay, thank you for that. So we will go ahead and adjourn Senate Revenue. Everybody have a good afternoon.